Have you ever noticed individuals who command a space without uttering a word? Without shouts or pleas, they simply withdraw and everything around them changes. The atmosphere shifts. People become restless, start chasing, feeling differently. Consider applying this strategy. What if you stopped giving automatic responses to events, chose silence over immediate reaction, distance over direct confrontation? What would be the outcome? The secret lies here. When we reduce our accessibility, mentally, physically, spiritually, the environment becomes unbalanced. This happens because others are used to manipulating us through our behavioral patterns, our predictability, our instant reactions. The moment we choose withdrawal, the rules of the game change completely, and those who thought they knew us realize their total ignorance about who we truly are. Jung observed, "What bothers us in others can guide us to a better understanding of ourselves." Reflect. When we become inaccessible, who really shows despair? Who becomes destabilized? Who seeks to provoke us just to draw any reaction? These attitudes reveal more about these people than about us, mainly highlighting how we still allow ourselves to be manipulated unconsciously. We keep giving ourselves to avoid conflicts, to maintain relationships, not to lose people who, in reality, were never truly by our side. And with each forced agreement, each immediate response, each emotional display, we lose fragments of our vitality. At the end of the day, what remains? Exhaustion, discontent, an inexplicable emptiness. I will explain why. Your excessive availability for those who don't even value your moments of silence. This reflection does not suggest social isolation, but a reconnection with oneself. It is about exploring what Jung called individuation, the path to authenticity and wholeness. This journey begins when we understand that silence often surpasses 1,000 explanations, that distancing, when conscious and not evasive, represents an act of inner strengthening. So I ask, how much longer will you remain under the control of others' emotions? How long will you react automatically when your sensitive spots are touched? Maybe it's time to cut those ties, to create distance, to cultivate your own mystery. Because when we limit our availability, we transform the relational dynamic. From an early age, we learn to be perpetually accessible, to respond promptly, to satisfy, to agree even when we wish to deny. We were conditioned to associate our value with our availability to others. But here's a truth perhaps never expressed so clearly. Constant accessibility is not a virtue, but a prison. As long as you believe you must always be available, emotionally or otherwise, you will remain vulnerable to exploitation, exhaustion, and neglect when your usefulness ends. Do you understand why? Because permanent availability makes you predictable, and what is easily predictable becomes a tool. People begin to use you as emergency emotional support, activating you when they need validation, relief, acknowledgement, then discarding you. This dynamic remains invisible because you feed the fantasy that your constant presence for everyone will guarantee reciprocity. However, reality works differently. Jung discussed the concept of persona, the social mask we wear to gain acceptance, affection, recognition. It is precisely this mask that sustains our exaggerated availability. We claim to be fine while suffocating inside, respond immediately even when exhausted, offer explanations, justifications, defenses as if we had infinite obligations. The reality is, the more we occupy the center of others' attention, the more we distance ourselves from our essence. Being permanently accessible is a subtle form of self-abandonment, a disguised mechanism as a search for approval, a flight from rejection, an attempt to control the impression we make. But such control demands sacrifice, and its cost is our peace, our vital force being distributed as if it were inexhaustible when in fact it is severely limited. Individuals who demand your constant availability do not seek your authentic presence. They yearn for the benefits you provide: validation, company, distraction, psychological comfort. When we set boundaries, when we refuse to react as expected, these same people show irritation, accusations, estrangement. Not because you have changed, but because you stopped fulfilling your expected roles. Here's the harsh reality. The more available we remain, the less we are valued, because what is abundant becomes devalued. No one respects what is obtained without effort. No one values the permanently available. Now ponder. Who truly deserves your attention? Who deserves your time, your listening, your presence? Or better, who deserves to experience your absence? Before answering, we need to understand something fundamental. Why do we react so impulsively? Why do we give in so easily? What drives this almost automatic desire to respond, justify, please? The answer lies in what Jung called psychic energy, the topic of the next section. Because your energy is your only true resource, and without learning to preserve it, others will use it against you. If these reflections resonate with you, consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you for your support. Jung did not see the human mind as an automatic mechanism responding to stimuli without consequences. For him, our psyche works as an energy system, and every thought, feeling, and action consumes part of this vital force. The central question: do you determine where your energy is directed, or do you let external factors decide for you? Every impulsive reaction is an energy waste. Defending yourself from insignificant criticisms, responding to provocations just to prove your point, engaging in unproductive debates, trying to please those who don't value you. All these situations drain your inner strength without offering equivalent replenishment. Jung clearly stated, what we resist persists. The more we react, the more we imprison ourselves. Chronically emotionally exhausted individuals are not weak, they are poorly directed. And what is the result of this constant exhaustion? Vulnerability. And in vulnerability, we become easy prey. Manipulative, opportunistic, and emotionally dependent people notice this fragility. They perceive our inability to preserve energy, our excessive reactivity, our constant attempt to solve others' problems, and they take advantage. Jung proposed that a healthy psyche knows how to keep energy inside the system. This means refusing without guilt, silencing without cowardice, observing before acting, because true power lies not in reaction but in conscious choice of when and how to act. This is only possible when we know ourselves deeply, recognizing our own triggers. How many nights have you lost sleep over unfinished dialogues? How many hours have you wasted ruminating over perfect responses or trying to decipher others' behavior? This is energy wasted with no return. We keep alive ghosts that should have been long buried, feeding patterns that only exist because we insist on responding. Psychic energy is like a protective field. Well preserved, it generates presence. We enter spaces commanding respect naturally. Poorly managed, we become invisible, reactive, fragile, and the world rarely shows mercy to the easily manipulated. Begin by observing your own triggers. What sparks your automatic reactions? What shakes your balance? These are the exact points where your energy escapes, demanding attention, not to develop coldness or indifference, but to conquer selectivity, sovereignty over yourself. One of Jung's greatest discoveries: when we preserve our energy, we break the projections that others place upon us. This causes immense discomfort as we enter a shadowy territory, that of silent manipulation. Next, we'll examine how opportunistic individuals feed on our vitality and why our inaccessibility completely disarms these strategies. Be prepared to face those who have always exploited you energetically without you even knowing. For those who want to delve even deeper into this inner exploration, consider acquiring my ebook, Revealing the Shadow, Carl Jung's guidance for facing internal conflict. This guide offers not only understanding but also practical strategies to embrace all parts of yourself. By acquiring this guide, you will take a courageous step toward one of the deepest and most revolutionary aspects of human psychology: the encounter with your own shadow. The ebook link is pinned in the first comment. And remember, this journey is just the beginning. Continue exploring your shadows to discover the light they can reveal. The illusion of control makes us believe that our reactions are deliberate choices, but reality is more complex. Most of our emotional responses follow programming, and those who understand this mechanism manipulate us easily. Skilled manipulators do without threats, shouts, or direct pressure. They simply activate triggers we leave exposed, and we invariably react. Jung called projection the psychological phenomenon where we project onto others aspects we do not recognize in ourselves. However, there is another aspect to this phenomenon rarely discussed. While others project onto us, we also become receptacles for these images. And the greater our emotional availability, the more we become blank screens for these projections. Recognize that friend who only shows up in critical moments, that partner who constantly needs your rescue, that person who values you only when it's convenient. None of this is coincidence. They are not relating to you authentically, but to the representation they have of you, the role you agreed to play. And why do we agree? Out of fear of disappointment, lack of love, abandonment. The most effective manipulation does not occur through direct confrontation, but in the silence of blame. When we feel we owe others, when we believe we must be available, help, understand, even when it destroys us internally. The crucial point: manipulators do not need direct control, they only need us to keep reacting predictably. When we interrupt this pattern, the system collapses. When we start saying no, respond with silence, withdraw instead of explaining ourselves, the projections begin to fall apart. The mask they placed on us slips away. This destabilizes people because they can no longer categorize us and, worse, are forced to confront themselves. Few are ready for that. Our unavailability is a threat because it forces others to face their own emptiness. The silence we offer reveals the internal noise they prefer to ignore. This leads to attacks, criticisms, dramatizations, not because we are wrong, but because we stopped being convenient mirrors. Jung stated, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." When we withdraw, when we interrupt the cycle, the other's shadow emerges. And this is unbearable for those who have always used us as an emotional valve. And what about us? Are we ready to face the discomfort of being misunderstood, rejected, or attacked for our self-preservation? Are we ready to withstand the silence after a rupture? because it is precisely in that silence that a new form of power is born. We will discuss this next. In the next section, we will understand why silence can be the most devastating weapon of the human psyche and how it completely transforms the dynamic between us and the world. The contemporary context is characterized by excessive noise. Everyone seeks to be heard, responds instantly, pursues victories in irrelevant arguments, defends positions even at the cost of their peace. However, there is a little known and rarely mastered resource, the power of silence. Not the silence of submission or fear, but intentional, calculated, profoundly lucid silence, the kind that is not absence but intensifies presence. Jung conceived of silence not as emptiness but as fertile ground for inner transformation. When we suspend reactions, we begin to observe. Through observation, we identify previously invisible patterns, emotional repetitions, manipulative games, cycles of self-sabotage. Silence provides mental clarity, and this lucidity threatens those who live to control us. Have you noticed how certain people go into despair when we do not answer? Do not justify ourselves, simply disappear? They do not miss us, they miss having narrative control. As long as we talk, we stay in their game. In silence, we change their rules. This unbalances anyone who depends on our reactions. True silence transcends verbal absence. It represents mastery of our own energy. It means refusing to be dragged by external emotions. It means a conscious choice not to participate in conflicts that are not worth the investment. Jung indicated individuation, the process of becoming authentically oneself, requires this withdrawal, because only in silence can we hear our own inner voice unimpeded. However, silence comes with a price. It will drive away those who valued only the role we played. It will make us incomprehensible to those who saw us only through their own projections. It will make us seem distant, cold, arrogant. All these reactions come from those who never sought your depth, only your function. The hard truth: the more we mature, the more selective we become with our words, realizing that every expression is an energetic investment, and few deserve access to our deepest truth. Sometimes silence does not mean retreat, but sovereignty. It is the language of those who have transcended the need for external validation. Silence is disturbing because it forces others to confront their own thoughts, their internal noise. This discomfort reveals more about them than any argument of ours could express. We do not need to explain our absence. It speaks for itself, and those who feel threatened by it show just how much they depended on our imbalance to maintain their sense of control. Yet the most powerful silence is not the one that disturbs others, but the one that rebuilds us internally. The silence that connects us to something beyond external approval. In this inner space, free from others' demands, we begin to regain our vitality, to reconnect with our essence. We will discuss this in detail next. Because beyond eliminating external interference, we need to relearn how to consciously direct our energy. Choose where it is spent, where it stays, and above all, where it should never be wasted. It is time to learn to be selective with our own essence. Understanding these principles intellectually is useless if in practice we keep agreeing when we wish to decline, responding to disturbing messages, participating in empty conversations, and maintaining relationships sustained only by inertia. Awareness without application is just another form of self-deception. True transformation begins when we firmly decide to become selective. This takes consistent emotional discipline. Conscious unavailability does not mean coldness, arrogance, or insensitivity. It is not being accessible to anyone at any moment for any reason. It means regaining control over your own energy, your time, your inner peace. This process begins with small actions, delaying responses, breathing before reacting, leaving discussions before being drawn into chaos, switching off communications without guilt, saying not today, stating I'm not interested, declaring I won't participate. The most crucial aspect, we dismiss the need to justify our absences. We don't need to explain our silence. We owe no one satisfaction but ourselves. For many, this represents an unforgivable transgression, because by declining to explain, we remove the other's means of keeping us trapped in an emotional narrative where we always play the helpful, the understanding, the available one. Jung knew that every process of individuation brings periods of isolation. Not depressive isolation, but sacred isolation, a period of inner retreat where we relearn to listen to our own voice without external interference, reconstruct our identity not through others' eyes but from our authentic center. Want an effective indicator of your development? Observe who moves away when you become more reserved. Observe who tries to provoke you when you stop reacting. Observe who accuses you of changing when you start to preserve yourself. These are not signs of your mistake. They prove your liberation process. Unavailability initially causes discomfort. We feel guilt, question if it's selfishness, hear accusations of excessive harshness. That is part of deconstruction. We spend our lives conditioned to put ourselves second. Naturally, change generates discomfort not just in us but in everyone who benefited from our previous version. Conscious unavailability is the bedrock of self-determination. When we say no to the world, we say yes to ourselves. When we leave toxic environments, we reaffirm that our peace is above any false connection. And when we stop justifying ourselves, we begin to earn respect, even if only from a few. However, few are ready for this kind of presence, because our emotional absence exposes wounds they prefer to ignore. It reveals how much they depended on our emotional chaos to maintain their sense of control. That's when the rupture occurs. And with it comes pain, isolation, estrangement, loss, when in reality we are experiencing liberation. But what comes next? What follows distancing? What emerges from the silence? In the conclusion, we will address this. The rebirth that only occurs when we have the courage to be misunderstood, to be alone, and to become complete independently. The time has come to understand why the solitude of the strong is the path to true freedom. When we stop being universally available, something profound begins. First, you experience silence, a discomforting silence that seems to scream internally. You question whether you did the right thing, if you are being too harsh, if you are losing people who valued you. Gradually, this silence transmutes. It begins to purify, calm, and heal. Then solitude emerges, not the solitude of lack, but the solitude of full presence, your own. The solitude of the resilient. The solitude of those who no longer betray their essence to maintain company. In that previously confusing space, clarity settles. Where there was anxiety, serenity takes root. Where there was lack, a new form of power arises. The power of inner completeness. Jung stated that the individuation process, becoming authentic, requires retreat from the collective, disidentification from the social mask, a temporary solitary journey. That is exactly what we do when deciding to become unavailable. We are not fleeing the world, we are returning to ourselves. At this point, we transform from reactive to creative. We are no longer molded by circumstances, but begin to shape our reality from within. People who are uncomfortable with our absence reveal that they never wanted our authenticity, only our role. Now that we no longer fit, they are lost. This is liberating. We will lose people but find our essence. We will leave environments but reconnect with our truth. We will be misunderstood but finally begin to be respected. Because when we are no longer universally available, we become valuable, rare, memorable. Make no mistake, this is a rebirth, a new beginning. The start of a life in which we are no longer available for emotional fragments, mind games, emptiness disguised as affection. Now we only accept what resonates with our peace, our truth, our integrity. If you have made it this far, it's because part of you is already ready for this new journey. Part of you already understands that being loved means nothing if it requires self-annihilation. And that authentic self-love begins when we choose ourselves, even if that temporarily costs us solitude. Share in the comments. Are you ready to be misunderstood, rejected, or even hated in the name of your inner freedom? Are you willing to pay the price of being authentic? If this message resonated with you, if it made sense, write in the comments, "I prioritize my peace." Let's see how many are ready for this transformation. Don't miss the next video. It is significant, much more than you can imagine. I'll see you there.